give me a better response than that. It's just loud. Is that going to be doing that thing? Amen. All right. Well, any preacher who goes anywhere has got to take a minute to blather on about how glad he is to be where he is, whether he really is or not. He's got to tell everybody how excited and how glad to see everybody and all of that stuff. So I'm going to take a minute to do that because that's what preachers have to do. I'm really glad to be here. No, I really am. I am. I've been excited about this for a long time because I don't know all of you, but the ones that I do know, you're my favorite people in the whole world. Don't tell my wife and my daughter that. They're not here this weekend. Don't tell the church that I preach, but you people are my favorites. Every year, the ones that I know from camp, that's just all I live for is camp. I go to camp, and it's camp, and then I cry when I go home, and all I'm doing is waiting to get back to camp. And it's because of you. It's not because of anything else. It's you all. And I am so excited to be here because, when we go to camp or when a preacher goes and preaches somewhere, they're expecting the preacher or the counselor or the teacher to do the encouraging and teaching and all of that stuff. When really, I get everything out of it. I'm going to get, Rob will agree with this. Rob will tell you this. I'm going to get everything out of this weekend. You all have to sit there and be bored. I mean, this is going to be work for you to hang in there with me, but that's going to be great for me because I love you all, and I am really, really excited to be here. I love Rob and Andy, and they mean the world to me. And I don't know who was asleep at the wheel when that decision was made to have me come in this weekend. I don't know how that got through, but I'm glad it did because I'm just excited to be with you and for what it's going to mean for me. So appreciate the church having me. Really appreciate my boys coming with me. My wife and daughter not able to come, but my sons were able to come up, and so it's just really cool so far. We were losing our voices on the way up, singing 70s and 80s stuff on the radio and banging drums on the steering wheel and stuff. So it's been cool so far. And then they get to go away, and I get to have peace and quiet because I get my own room and stuff. So that's really cool. So I'm excited. There was something else I was going to say I was excited about, but apparently I'm not. So anyway, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. A couple of things I want to ask you to do as we get started. The first thing I want to ask you to do is be here. Now, I know you're saying, duh, I'm here. What do you mean be here? Well, I want you to be here. A lot of you don't have a choice because your parents drop you off and threw your stuff out in the van and they're gone. And you won't see them and they're excited to be away from you for a while. So you don't have a choice. Some of you do have a choice to be here. If you have a choice, please be here. And when you're here, be here. You know what I mean by that? When you're here, be here. When you're outside playing and whatever you're doing, man, go at it. When you're eating, be a hog, man. I mean, just tear it up and have fun with it. When you're in here, really be here and be involved in what's going on. Don't be somewhere else. Be here. And I think you'll really benefit from it, not because of me. Bring a Bible. If you haven't brought a Bible, I'm sure they can provide you with one here. And if you haven't brought one, please bring one every time that we come together. We're not going to do a lot of flipping through the Bible and stuff because sometimes we kind of get lost and the preacher goes on. I'm going to get in one passage and stay in one passage pretty much the whole time. It's going to be very easy. But, this is all I have. This is all I brought this week is the Bible. That's it. And why is that? Because it's the only thing that matters. It's the only book that has answers. It's the only book that's going to tell us anything worth knowing. And so I'm excited to be able to talk about the Bible with you because I love it and I know that you love it. This is awesome to be in a room full of young people and Andy, and you love the Bible like I do. Man, that's amazing. I don't get that. I coach a lot of things, football, baseball, basketball, soccer, and I'm in a lot of stuff out in the community, and I love kids, but it's discouraging because not all the kids I'm around love God and love the Bible. Their parents don't, their families don't much care. You do, man, and that's exciting. I'm really, really excited to be with you, and you don't know how much you encourage me. So the third thing I'm going to ask you to do is really listen to me. Really listen to what I'm saying. And here's why I say, not because of me, because I don't matter. I want you to listen to me because the things that I'm going to tell you are things that I have not always done, and things that I still don't always do like I should. And I'm going to tell you some things that you need to be doing because God says so. And if you don't do it, you're going to cause yourself a lot of heartache. And I've been there. And I have caused myself a lot of heartache. And I have caused heartache for lots and lots and lots of other people. I know what happens when you don't do what we're going to talk about. It's bad. It's really bad. It's horrible. And there's some things that you do that you can't ever get away from, that you live with for the rest of your life because you didn't listen to God. I've done that. And I'm either, every single day, I'm either messing it up or I'm not messing it up because God is good and I'm trying as hard as I can. And it's hard. But I don't want you to have the difficulties that I've had. I don't want you to have the hurt that I've had and caused other people. So I really hope that you'll listen to what I'm saying. You know, I thank God for people who never seem to have messed up. You know, I know some people that they just don't seem like they've ever messed anything up. I love those people, and I'm jealous of them. I wish I was them. I'm not. I've messed a lot of things up, and I don't want you to do that. Maybe you're sitting there tonight, and you're saying, right now, I'm really messing some things up. I'm sitting here. I'm in a church building. I'm with the youth rally crowd, and I look pretty, or I look handsome, and I look clean, and I'm really messing it up. This is the right place for you, and we can help you fix that. So, I was never in the military. My dad was in the military. He was in the Army. He fought in Korea. I grew up near Fort Knox, Kentucky, where the Army trains, a lot of armor. There at Fort Knox, I live right now between two Marine bases, Camp Lejeune and Cherry Point. I get the award, Rob, by the way, for farthest. I think I got 5 hours. I think I got everybody on that. So what do I get for that? I get anything for that?
More hair gel.
I don't use gel, it's called glue. So, what was I saying? Oh, so I was never in the military. And I always regretted that because I thought if I would have gone in the military, I really think that would have helped me grow up and mature. At least I thought that till I met Dean. Dean was in the Marines, and he's the biggest 10-year-old I've ever known. It did nothing for Dean whatsoever. So, maybe not. But this I know about the military. When the military is in combat, they're trying hard to hide themselves from the enemy, right? You don't see when the military is in combat, right? If they're in Afghanistan, they've got the sandy-looking camouflage. They're in Vietnam, they had the green stuff. If they're in snow, they've got the white stuff. They're trying to blend in, right? They don't want to be seen because being seen gets you hurt if you're in combat. But when I go out for my run every day, I don't try to blend in. Blending in for a runner is bad, right? Andy rides a bike, right? Blending in for a biker is bad. Why is that? Because if you blend in, you can't be seen, you get hurt, you might hurt somebody else. So there are times when it's good to blend in. There are times when it's really not good. What do you think as a Christian? As a Christian, are you supposed to be wearing camouflage and blending in? Or are you supposed to be like a runner wearing orange and reflectors and being seen? What do you think? What do you think? You're supposed to be seen. You're not supposed to be camouflaged. You're not supposed to be wearing what the world is wearing, so you blend in and nobody sees you. This is not, Christianity is not a covert, behind enemy lines, blending in so nobody knows we're here and we'll do some good things. That's not Christianity. Christianity is standing out. It's being seen. And if we're not being seen, we're not getting the job done. And that's really what I want to talk about for the rest of this weekend is being out front, being seen, being bold, being out there so that we're making an impact rather than blending in and being like everybody else. Matthew chapter 5 is where we're going to start tonight. When I started thinking about this, this is the first thing I thought of, the first passage I thought of, Matthew 5, 13 to 16. Matthew 5, 13 to 16. Now, in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus starts off telling what? Talking about what? Matthew 5, verses 3 through 12, he talks about what? What? The Beatitudes, right? The Beatitudes talk about characteristics Christians ought to have and the blessings we'll get. Verse 5, for instance, says that if you are living the Christian life, what blessing will you have? Verse 5. Look, wait. Y'all going to have to start working this. You don't want me to stand up here and talk for however long I've got. I promise you. I want you to talk as much as you can. So tell me, in verse 5, what blessing do you get for living the Christian life? You inherit the earth. But what does that mean? I'm going to tell you something that as a preacher, I hate to say. I don't know. I don't know what that means. Now, we got some really smart guys in here, right? Some of you may have gone to Bible school and gotten a degree in Bible. I didn't do that, and I'm not the smartest person to know. I don't know what that means. And people stand around and debate that all the time. Well, it means Jesus is coming back and he's going to set up a kingdom on the earth, and I don't believe that. The Bible doesn't teach that. What exactly does it mean that we'll inherit the earth? I don't know. But what I want you to notice is the bigness of the blessing. What will you inherit? What? The earth. You get the whole thing. The earth is yours. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 1, he said, or 3, I think, he said, don't worry about sort of trying to get this little blessing or that little blessing. He said, everything belongs to you. If you're a Christian, the whole world belongs to who? Who? You. Say the whole world belongs to me. Say it again. That's horrible. Say it again. For young people, y'all like, oh, what's the matter? I know you're tired. I don't want to talk about it. Why are you like so old? It's like preaching to a nursing home. Goodness gracious. Now, think about the bigness of that blessing. You get to own the whole earth if you're a Christian. What about verse 8? What's the blessing? You live the Christian life, what do you get out of it? You get to see God. Man, how amazing is that? You get to see God. What about verse 9? What's the blessing? Matthew 5:9, what's the blessing? You get to be called sons of God. We'll talk later on in the weekend about how awesome it is to be part of a really special chosen group. But you get to be called a child of God. That's awesome. So, as a Christian, you get some big, amazing blessings. All right? But, as a Christian, it's not only you who receives the blessing. Look at chapter 5, verses 21 to 26. And what Jesus says in Matthew 5, 21 to 26, is that as a believer, your life is a blessing to other believers. Jesus says you're going to know how to get along better and deal with conflict better as a Christian than as a non-Christian. There's always going to be conflict among people, but as a Christian, you can deal with it better. You can get over it. You can handle it. You can move on. You can forgive each other and go on. So you're a blessing to yourself, a blessing to other believers. What about verses 28, I think, in Matthew? I sound really loud. Am I not really loud? Is it okay? Okay. Verses 27 to 32. Verses 27 to 32, what does Jesus say? If you're living the Christian life, you are a blessing to your family. If you're living the Christian life, you're going to be faithful to your spouse. And you're going to keep your home together. You're going to keep your marriage together. If you're living the Christian life, you're going to keep that together and be in your family. So you're going to be a blessing to your family if you're living the Christian life. All right? So, the main point I want to make tonight, Matthew 5, 13 to 16. Matthew 5, 13 to 16. If you're living the Christian life, you're a blessing to yourself, or you receive blessing. You're a blessing to other Christians. You're a blessing to your family. And you're a blessing to who else? In Matthew 5, 13 to 16. Who else are you blessing as you live the Christian life? Who's he talking about? You're the light of the... What is the world? It's everybody, and especially it's unbeliever. So as a Christian, you're living the Christian life and a blessing to unbelievers. Here's what Jesus is going to tell us about in this passage. 3 things, because preachers love a 3-point outline. 3 things that he's going to tell us about in this passage. Number 1, who are you? Who are you? And included in that, what are you supposed to be doing? Number 2, how you can fail to do what you're supposed to be doing. Number 3, what's going to happen to you if you do fail. All right, so those 3 things and we're done. All right, first, in Matthew chapter 5, in verse 13, what are you? Jesus says you are what? You are the salt of the earth. You're the salt of the earth. I feel like my hair's sticking up. Is my hair sticking up right there? Is it kind of sticking up? Okay, all right. What does he mean that you're the salt of the earth? What in ancient times, and still even today, what does salt do that Jesus is referring to here? It does season. It certainly makes things better, taste better, and all that. That's right. What else? It preserves. Preserves what? If you put it on meat, especially in ancient times, there were refrigerators, right? And so to preserve their meat, and even today, right? You ever have country ham? Ham is no good unless you're thirsty for a week after you eat it. Ham is no good. This packaged stuff you can get, or city ham, or whatever, forget about it. If it is not salted, and if you're not thirsty for a week after you haven't had ham, you just haven't had it. Salt keeps meat from going rotten. Jesus pictures the world in this passage as being rotten. You ever been around rotten meat? Do you have any idea? What does it smell like? It's got a smell all of its own. Nothing else smells like rotten meat. You ever tasted rotten meat? Of course not. Of course you've never done that. Why not? It's going to make you sick. Right? It's gross. Rotten meat is disgusting. Jesus pictures the world as rotten meat. Now, does the world think it's rotten? This is the sad thing about it. The world thinks that because we have now progressed to a time when men can marry men and women can marry women, now we're where we're supposed to be. This is how it was supposed to be all along. And the world doesn't know that it's rotten. The world thinks that because we have the idols that we do, the celebrities that we do, and the things they do and say, and the way they dress, and the way they act, that's awesome. That's how a person is supposed to be. And we have people modeling themselves after Miley Cyrus and people like that. I know I sound like an old fogey, believe me. When I was sitting at young people's things like you are, and they started hammering Van Halen and all that stuff, I was going, man, that guy is so old. Who can hammer Van Halen? I mean, what's wrong with that? I've been where you are. And as I sit up here and talk about that, you're going, dude, you're over the hill, man. You don't know what you're talking about. The world thinks it's great that we have celebrities that can get married and get divorced and get married, divorced, as many times they want to, and wear what they do and act like they do. The world thinks that's great. It's rotten. It's rotten. The world is rotting around us. And Jesus says, as a Christian, what are you going to be able to do? What are you going to be able to do as a Christian? You're going to check that rotting. You're going to be able to hold some of that back. Right? How do you do that? As a Christian, how do you at least help with that rotting that's going on? What do you do? How do you do that? Yes, ma'am. The leading them to Christ is the most important thing. Every person, and this is really what we're talking about, every person that you lead to Christ makes the world a better place. It makes it less rotten. Every person that you're able to share the gospel with and convert that person to Christ, the world is less rotten. That's a good thing, because rotten meat is gross. That's a good thing. How else can you do that? When your friends are involved in something that's wrong, they're doing something they shouldn't do. You should talk to them. Absolutely talk to them about it. And try to arrange with them and tell them why this is not a good thing and help them to do the right thing. As Christians, we ought to be an influence on those who are around us to be better than they are. To be better than they would be if we weren't around. What about your friends? Are your friends better behaved than they would be if you weren't around because of you? Or do you go along with it? Do you tolerate it? Well, I don't join in, okay, but do you not say anything? The world is supposed to be a less rotten place because as Christians, we're in it. All right. What else does Jesus call us? What's the other thing he calls us in this passage? You're the salt of the earth and what? You are the light of the world. Now here, Jesus pictures the world not as rotten, but as being what? Dark. That's exactly right. The world is a dark place. What do you think darkness symbolizes in a spiritual way? Think about real darkness. What does it symbolize? Okay, the devil, right? The prince of darkness. The devil is what else? Death, sin, right? People do things where they can't be seen. They don't want to be visible. That's right. What else? Selfishness is part of it. Exactly. What else? What about fear? Anybody ever been afraid of the dark? Now, let me try something. If you've ever been afraid of the dark, raise your hand. If you're still afraid of the dark, keep your hand up. I knew all the guys would go down. I mean, okay, all right, we got some honesty, I think. I'll keep put your hand down. I'm going to keep mine up because I'm really scared of the dark. I don't mind telling you. I never go in a dark room. I am so happy whoever figured out that you always put the light switch right inside the door. I'll never go in a dark room. I walk up to it, put my hand in the whole time praying, nothing touches me. I'll turn the light on. I am terrified of the dark, man. If my wife is gone for some reason, you know, and it's time to go to bed, and I get it, I turn the light off, jump into bed, cover over that, and I don't move until the light comes back in the morning. I am terrified of the dark. Darkness symbolizes fear. What else does it symbolize? It symbolizes ignorance. If you're in darkness, it means that there are things you don't know. If the lights went out right now, I wouldn't move. This is the first time I've ever been in this building. I don't know where everything is. In the darkness, I would be ignorant of where to go. Now, in my own, where I preach, if the lights went out, I've been in there a lot. I could get around just fine. But in here, I would be ignorant. Darkness, I don't need an illustration, but he's threatening to turn the lights out on me back there. Please don't, I'll cry. Darkness symbolizes ignorance. Listen, people in the world may think they have all the answers, but they don't, because they don't have this. This is where all the answers are. All the answers are not at UNC. Goodness knows they're not at UNC. All the answers are not at Duke. All the answers are not at UNC Charlotte, or whatever that is. All the answers are not at Harvard. They're not in Washington, D.C., or in Raleigh. That's not where the answers are. The answers are right here. And the world says, I don't want that. And so the world can't have any answers. The world lives in fear. They don't act like they do, but they do. The world lives in sin. They don't know that, but they do. And so, what is your job? The world is in darkness. You're supposed to do what? You're supposed to be the light. That's exactly right. You are supposed to dispel the sin, the ignorance, and the fear that the world lives in. How do you think you do that? How do you do that? Got to stand out. How? What did you say, sir? Let them know what? Okay, they got to know they're in darkness. What is the light exactly? Jesus said, you're the light of the world. Well, I don't feel much like light most of the time. What really is the light of the world? How can I be the light of the world? Because He's the light of the world. And so when we're shining the light, what are we doing? We're taking Jesus and doing what? Giving Him to the world. He's the light of the world. And so this is what we're supposed to be doing. We're the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Now, how do we apply salt and light? Two ways. And this is very important because we got to have both of these. You can't just do one. And I hear a lot of people and see a lot of people just do one. You apply salt and light by what you say and by what you do. A lot of people just want to do one of those. They say, well, I'm not good at teaching the Word of God. I'll just let my life be a sermon. And that sounds lovely. But if they don't hear the Word of God, they can't be saved. They've got to see it and hear it. A lot of Christians just want to tell about the Word of God. We like to hammer people. We like to pound on people with the Word of God and not live it. We've got to do both. Here's the thing about that. You say, I'm trying to live it, but I'm not perfect at it. That's okay. Because the world is fed up with Christians who act like they're perfect and they're obviously not. Let me tell you something. The way that you're going to reach the people around you the best is by being transparent and open and saying, I don't have all the answers. I'm not perfect. I don't get everything right. But here's what I know. The world is fed up with Christians who act like they're perfect, and they're not. And everybody knows it, except the Christian. It's okay to be honest. It's okay to tell your non-Christian friends, I mess up. I did this wrong. I'm bad at this. That's okay. In fact, you ought to do it. So, well, okay, I can do that, but I can't tell people about the Bible. No, here's what you can't do that you're worried about. You can't answer every question they have, and you can't defeat every denominational position they have. That's what you're scared of. You don't have to do that. We think that unless we know every denominational error and 56 verses to counter it, we're not ready to tell people about the Word of God. You don't have to know all that stuff. What do you have to know? What do you have to know? The Word. That's all you have to know. You don't have to know why everybody else is wrong. You have to know what's right. I have a friend of mine who's a doctor. She said when she was in medical school, they were learning about how to spot broken bones. Guess what they looked at in medical school to learn how to spot broken bones? You would think they looked at x-rays of broken bones. They didn't. Guess what they looked at? They looked at x-ray after x-ray after x-ray of healthy, well-formed bones. She said it drove her crazy. Looking at all those x-rays of bones that were healthy. It was just constant, over and over. But what does that allow you to do? Then when you see an x-ray that's got a deformed or a broken bone, what happens? It's obvious. You don't have to know everything that's wrong about everybody else. Jesus said, let your light shine. He didn't say, know what's wrong with everybody else's darkness. You have to know the Word. How do you do that? How do you do that? You got to read it. Study it at home. Do you do that? Do you study the Bible at home, by yourself, personal Bible study, with faith? Do you do that? Are you at church, as much as you can be, hearing the Word taught by people who really believe it, and really trust it, and really teach it correctly? If you will do those two things, you will have everything you need to go out in the world and offer people the Word and say, there it is, I'm just giving it to you. You can do that. You don't have to know everything. But what if somebody asks me a question and I don't know the answer? That is the one thing that kept me from preaching full time for quite a while. I was terrified that somebody would ask me a question and I didn't know the answer to it. Terrified. Guess what? It happens all the time. I've been preaching for 26 years. I know. You're saying, man, you must have started when you were 5. I mean, look at you. You're so young. You're in such great shape, man. Wow, you've been preaching all that time. How'd you start at 5? 26 years. And people still ask me questions, and I don't know the answer to it. Is that the end of the world? What do you do? What do you do? You find the answer. You go study it. Right? Or you can ask him. Well, no. Ask Rob. I don't know what you people are going to do here. You got a preacher, a new preacher, ask him. Don't ask Andy or Rob. I don't know what I was thinking there. But find out. Ask somebody. Right? It's okay to say, man, I don't know about that. Let me check it out and I'll get back to you. That's okay. You can teach people the Word of God and you can live your faith. You don't have to be perfect at either one of those to do it in the right kind of way. All right. What else? Let's see. Thank you. Look for just a second in Matthew chapter 7. I don't have a whole lot more to go. I know you're going, man. I'm hungry and I want to lay down somewhere. Don't be intimidated by this. Matthew chapter 7. Don't be intimidated by this. When you're living your faith and you're talking to somebody about the Word and you say to them, and we'll talk later about this, It's not only important that you tell people the truth, but you tell them the right way. We'll talk about that because sometimes as Christians we're horrible at that. Sometimes as Christians we just stink at speaking the truth in love. We got the truth down, the love part stinks. A lot of times with us in the Church of Christ. So we'll talk about that later. But a lot of times you're sharing the word with somebody and you say, listen, man, I'm not sure about that thing you're doing or the way you're living. I'm not sure about that. I don't think that's right. And they'll say to you, Jesus said, man, judge not that you be not judged. The only Bible verse that people who've never read the Bible know. That's the only one they know. They know one verse. And that is that verse because what that allows them to do is keep doing what they're doing and get you off their back. And so you back up and go, oh man, you pulled out the judgment verse on me. Now I don't know what to do. You got to understand what Jesus is saying in that passage. Jesus is not saying that it's never ever right to judge. And I'll show you why. Verses 1 and 2 of Matthew chapter 7. Jesus says, first of all, watch your attitude. Do not judge, and be not judged, for by the standard of measure that you judge, you will be judged. Listen, if you expect other people to be perfect, guess what God is going to do? If you expect other people to be perfect, God is going to say, okay, if that's the way you want to play it, then when I judge you, I'll expect you to be perfect. How's that going to go? You fail. You fail. Okay? So Jesus says, watch your attitude. Be patient with people. Don't expect perfection because you can't be perfect. Then Jesus says, watch yourself. You hypocrite. How can you have that big honking sequoia tree growing out of your eye and you look at Jabari and go, little speck of dust right there. And you got a tree growing out of your head. You can't do that. Jesus says, watch your attitude. Watch yourself. Be careful. Make sure that you are doing what you're supposed to do. Then what does he say? Then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Notice he doesn't say don't ever take the speck out. He says do it the right way. Don't be intimidated by people who say to you, don't judge me, because Jesus said don't judge. That's not what he said. Don't ever judge. He said watch your attitude, watch yourself, and then help other people fix what's wrong. So, that's how it's supposed to happen. Let's talk about how it sometimes doesn't happen. Matthew chapter 5. Just a couple more things, and we're done. Matthew chapter 5. How sometimes this doesn't happen the way it should. What's the first way that sometimes it doesn't happen the way it should? Matthew 5:13. You're the salt of the earth, but what? But if the salt loses its saltiness, then what? Well, what good is it? So first of all, we can fail to do what Jesus is saying when the salt loses its flavor. What do you think he means by that? Anybody? What does he mean by that? Come on. Look, I'm giving you a chance. Right? You people want to talk all the time, and I ask you to talk, and you don't say anything. What does he mean by that? That the salt loses its saltiness. I'm sorry? It certainly has lost its value, and there's a reason it's lost its value. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. He took yours. Way to go, man. Stealing from a girl. We're going to talk about that tomorrow night. Somebody make sure he's here. Jabari, make sure he's here. Right there.
Yeah, he can do that.
Get me started. All right. So, the salt has lost it. The salt has lost what makes it able to do what it's supposed to be doing. Now, that's normally a problem. Rob kind of alluded to the fact that I'm from Kentucky. I'm very proud to be from Kentucky. I don't care what anybody says about Kentucky. You know, I get the how do you know that the toothbrush was invented in Kentucky? Because if it was invented somewhere else, it would be called a teeth brush. I've heard that a million times. All right. So, but here's what we know how to do in Kentucky, besides play the best basketball on the planet. What? Amen. Who was in the championship game? All right. So, As long as it wasn't Duke, I don't care. All right. So, here's what we know how to do in Kentucky. We know how to take stuff that's lost its original purpose and use it again. Keep using it. All right? Your washing machine goes out, man, you don't get rid of it. In Kentucky, you put it out in the yard, put dirt in it, plant flowers in it. That's what we do in Kentucky. So we keep using the thing, right? Your stove goes out, you don't throw it out. You put it on the porch, man. Makes a nice porch decoration. In Kentucky, we know how to keep using things that don't work anymore. All right? So, but Jesus says that the salt, when it loses its saltiness, what do you do with it? What do you do with it? You throw it out. You can't use it anymore. Here's what he's saying. When the Christian loses what makes him a Christian or her, what good is he? What good is she? When you lose what makes you a child of God, the belief and the life and the attitude, what good are you? What good are you? How can you share Christ with somebody when you don't have Him in you? How can you talk to somebody about the life they're supposed to live when you ain't living? You can't. So that's one thing. We stop living the way we're supposed to. What does he say about the light? What does he say about the light? Sometimes we don't let our light shine because we do what with it? What does he say? We put it in the basket, we hide it. I want to ask you something. Why would a person do that? Why would a Christian hide his or her light? Yes, maybe. That's exactly right. And that's what it comes down to every single time. He was going to steal your answer, but I gave him the stink eye, and he didn't do that. So you're good.
God gave us the answer.
Don't pull that. Don't pull that. That's what it comes down to. Whatever reason we might give as to why we're not shining our light, it comes down to fear. We're scared of the consequences. We're scared of what will happen. What might happen? If you let your light shine, what might happen? Give me an example. What can happen? Go ahead. He's done now. He's done now. Somebody give me an answer. What might happen? Yes, ma'am.
You might talk somebody into being Christian.
You might. That's right. And that's what we're after. That's what we're hoping happens. But what are we scared of? Yes, ma'am.
Criticism.
They might criticize you. What else? You might fail. It may just not go anywhere. What else? Yes, ma'am. They might judge you. That's right. Yes, sir. Okay, they might ask you some difficult questions. That's exactly right. But it all comes down to fear. We're scared. We're scared. And the worst thing of all, probably, they might make fun of it. They might make fun of it. So what do you do when you know you're supposed to do something, but you're scared to do it? You got to find some way, because it probably is not going to go away for most of us. There will still be an element of fear. I'll admit to you, there's an element of fear with me. When I have to shine my light someday, I don't mind admitting that. It won't always go away. But what you have to do is figure out that it's so important to do, you got to do it in spite of your fear. If your house was on fire, and somebody in your family was inside, they couldn't get out, would you be scared to go in there and help them? Would you be scared? I'd be terrified. I'd be terrified. My house has been on fire. I know what that's like. I would be terrified. But what would you do? You would understand that this thing has to be done. If you don't do it, somebody is going to die. And when somebody's life is at stake, you go through your fear to do what has to be done. But what about the lost person? What about the person who's not a Christian? Their house isn't on fire, but are they in danger? They're in danger of something bigger than losing their life. They might lose their soul. And Jesus says, so might you. So might I. You see, we got to figure out just how important this thing is. And when we really believe that, we will tell people about Christ even though we're afraid. Their soul is at stake, and so is ours. That's the last thing we'll talk about in this passage, Jesus says in this passage that if the salt loses its saltiness, it's not good for anything. So what do you do with it? What does he say? You throw it out of the house, and then people step on it. Now, Jesus didn't have to say either one of those things. All he had to say was, the salt lost its saltiness, and it's not good anymore. But he didn't stop there. And I am firmly convinced that the Bible never says one single word just because. There's always a reason why the Bible says what it does. Why does he say it's no good for anything except to be thrown out of the house and trampled underfoot by men? What do you think the throwing out of the house is? Whose house are we being thrown out of? When we lose our saltiness and we stop shining our light, whose house are we thrown out of? God's house. We lose our fellowship with God. And he says, it's trampled underfoot by men. We lose our relationship with God, and then we go through horrible suffering and hardship and difficulty because we've lost our relationship with God. We're in this world all alone without any hope, and we're looking at the next life and nothing but condemnation. That's how important it is. Alright? So, that's all I have. We're going to sing this song right in just a minute. Alright? Let me say this and we're done. I know I just said we done. I do that all the time. People where I preach hate that. I'll say, final point. 15 minutes later I'll say, final point. And they're like, oh, come on, dude. The Baptists are going to beat us at Golden Corral. Would you come on? I'm dogging anybody. I'm just being mean. So, a few years ago, I was doing a new workout. And I got a workout from a guy that also worked out at the gym. They called this guy Zeus, if that gives you an indication of what he looked like. He was absolutely ripped, solid, one humongous muscle. And so I thought, if I want to build muscle, I need to be asking that guy, right? So I go and ask Zeus. And so he gives me a workout and he says, now another thing you need to be doing, you need to drink 2 gallons of water every day. Now I hate water. I hate water. 2 gallons of water every day. So Zeus said it, man. Now, this guy's he's a muscle. That's all he is. So if I want to be a muscle, that's what I'm. So I'm drinking 2 gallons of water every day. 2 gallons of water every day. I hate water, but I did it. Eventually one day I was at the gym, I was working out, and I felt like I'd never felt before. Not in a good way. Really bad. Really, really sick. Really bad I felt. Had to quit working out, go home, lay in the bed. Took me a while to recover. Talking to some doctor friends of mine. Told them what happened. They said, dude, you drank too much water, knucklehead. You drink all that water, it dilutes the sodium. Your body doesn't have enough salt for you to function. You get sick, and eventually you die if you don't have enough salt. Right? Well, that's the condition the world is in. The condition the world is in is it needs more salt. The world is already sick. And what it needs is more salt. And so as Christians, we've got to be that salt. But when we lose our saltiness and when we stop shining our light, what happens to the world? It just gets sicker, and so do we. The world has to have our salt. It has to have our light. It has to. It has to have it to be saved. We have to do it to be right with God. So, tonight, you might not be as salty as you ought to be. You might not have that characteristic Christian living that you're supposed to have. And you know it. You know it. You probably still go to church. Probably still dress up. Still sing. Still pray. Maybe you're a leader. Maybe you're a teacher. But you know you're not getting it done. Maybe you're not a Christian. You know you ought to be. You know this. There's no doubt about this. What you need to do. This is an opportunity for either one of those situations to do something about that. This is where you need to do it. This is the group of people you need to do it with. This is where it needs to happen. You don't need to go home and not take care of this. If you are not a Christian, you know you need to be. If you are a Christian, but you're just not living the way you ought to, this is the place to get help. Please, do not leave until you have given somebody here a chance to help you to do the things that you need to do. You can talk to somebody after we're done. You know, we got this thing in the Church of Christ all about coming forward, and that's terrific. If you want to do, you don't have to do that. Get with somebody after church, man, and talk to them. But if you want to, this is an opportunity for you to come up here, let it be known what you need, and you can do that as we stand and sing this song.